Part 2. My son and daughter-in-law threw my belongings out of the house after stealing my $17 million lottery winnings. Like I said before, my son and daughter-in-law threw my things out after stealing my $17 million win. But what they didn't know, I never gave up the real ticket. It started with a post. Donna's face popped up on a public page I hadn't even followed. Her profile picture tilted head-perfect lighting. A librarian flagged it to me. "Is this about you?" she asked gently. The caption read, "Sometimes the people you trust most will stab you in the back." We're heartbroken to say that Ryan's mother stole our winning lottery ticket. She took it right out of my purse. We tried to reason with her, but she's confused and greedy. This was supposed to be for our daughter's future. Please pray for us. There were photos of them on their porch arms wrapped around Lily, solemn like mourners at a funeral for fairness. Hashtags: elder abuse, lottery theft, family betrayal, and the comments came fast. Disgusting. How could a mother do that? She should be ashamed. Take her to court. She probably doesn't even remember her own name. I stared at the screen. My coffee had gone cold. That was their next move. When they couldn't take the money quietly, they came for my name. They expected silence, expected shame. But they forgot something. I kept everything. The photo on my old flip phone, the receipt still folded in my purse. The original ticket now stored in a fireproof envelope, and the gas station security footage burned onto a USB drive in the inside pocket of my cardigan. I took a breath. Then I walked to the library's front desk and asked to borrow a computer. I started compiling. First, the photo of the ticket signed by me. Next, the camera still from the store, showing me at the counter, handing over cash. Then my bank statement showing a $5 withdrawal at the exact time of purchase. I scrolled through old text messages and found one from Dana. "We've put up with your crap long enough. Maybe go find someone else to mooch off of." I screenshotted it. Then I attached the official confirmation from the Lottery Commission, clearly naming Evelyn J. Warren as the sole legal winner. I bundled it all into one PDF. Then I wrote a short message. "To whom it may concern, a false claim has been made against me. Here is the truth, backed by documentation, timestamps, and state certification. I have stayed quiet until now because I didn't need to speak. But since they chose to involve the world, let the world see everything." I sent it first to the local paper, the same one that ran stories about pie contests and school board meetings. Then I sent it to Emily Kwan, a journalist known for covering family exploitation and elder fraud. She'd once written a piece about a grandfather left homeless after loaning his daughter his life savings. That story went viral. That night, I returned to the small studio I had rented, just a room behind a retired librarian's house. I made a cup of tea and waited. I didn't have to wait long. By the next day, the article was live. She was called a thief. But the receipts tell a different story. There I was standing at the gas station counter, ticket in hand, time-stamped and verified. No fanfare, just fact. By the end of the day, it had been shared thousands of times, and the hashtags changed. Restore justice for Evelyn. She bought it, she won it, receipts don't lie. Comments flooded Dana's original post. "You owe her an apology. So you tried to steal it. This is disgusting. You locked her out of her own life. That woman raised you. And this is what she gets." Someone even found an old comment where Dana mocked me for knitting. It was reshared over and over. The tide had turned. By the end of the week, Dana deactivated her account. Ryan locked his profile. Lily's name was removed from their bios. Then came a plain white envelope. No return address. Inside, a single line in shaky handwriting. "You win. We're leaving Nevada." I folded the note and placed it next to the lottery ticket, not as a trophy, just as proof that the truth, when written clearly, always outlasts the lie. The article went further than I ever expected. By day 3, it had been shared more than 60,000 times, not just in Nevada, but across the country. My name began popping up in comment sections of family forums, elder rights groups, even local news sites with headlines like, "Mother of the Year, you won't believe who actually bought the ticket." They called me the quiet winner. It made me smile, not because I wanted fame. I never did. But after years of being told I was too quiet, too soft, too much of a burden, my silence had finally spoken. And people had listened. While I sat in a small studio drinking tea and reading on my borrowed tablet, the storm I'd escaped was rolling over the house I used to call home. It started with the neighbors. The Johnsons down the street had thrown barbecues every month, rain or shine. Dana used to show up with her own condiments and insist on themed plates for her Instagram stories. Now their invite list had changed. The neighborhood Facebook group, once full of baby photos and lawn tips, turned cold. Someone posted a screenshot of the article and commented, "Used to wave at Dana every morning. Now I double-check my locks." Then came the school board. Lily's school had an active parent group. Dana had been the lead on the spring fundraiser. The day the article dropped, she was asked to temporarily step back. 2 days later, she was removed altogether. One parent, Melissa, a PTA regular, wrote on her account, "We don't reward liars here." What message does that send our kids? The biggest fallout came for Ryan. He worked in marketing for a mid-sized firm in Reno. I never really understood what he did something with branding outreach. What I did understand was that his job depended on public image, and now his image was ruined. The company released a statement. While we support our employees through personal matters, we cannot endorse behavior that contradicts our values of honesty and integrity. Effective immediately, Ryan Warren is no longer affiliated with our firm. I read it twice. Then I folded it and slipped it into the same envelope that held my lottery confirmation. It wasn't joy I felt. Not exactly. It was closure, the kind of quiet release that comes when the final door closes behind you and you don't need to knock again. Within a week, the house went up for sale. 2 weeks later, the sign read, "Under contract." They disappeared. Deleted their social media, stopped answering old friends, changed their phone numbers, moved so quietly it was like they'd never been part of that street at all. And still I said nothing. Not to the press, even though they asked. Not to the neighbors, though they whispered. Not even to Lily. She'd been silent through it all. Too young to understand. Too small to defend anyone. Somewhere I figured they'd start over, rebuild, rebrand, pretend none of it had happened. But they would never outrun the truth. Not because I'd chase them, but because the internet remembers. And so do mothers, especially the quiet ones. The house I bought wasn't fancy. A one-story bungalow on the edge of a sleepy town. White siding, a red mailbox. 2 front steps that creaked when it rained. But it was mine. No mortgage. No landlord. No one yelling about groceries while sipping wine and smiling behind my back. Just me. And a home with no one to impress. I moved in during early spring. The snow had just started to melt. Daffodils were pushing up through the dirt like they'd been waiting for someone to come back. I planted herbs in the kitchen window, basil, rosemary, mint, just for the scent. I kept my old kettle, the one they said looked too cheap for their kitchen. It whistled each morning, just like it did when Ryan was a boy, and I made tea before the school bus came. I placed my armchair by the front window, angled to catch the light. Draped a knitted blanket over the back, folded it just so. No one here to scoff at it. Above the side table, I hung one photograph. It had been taken by Danny, the gas station clerk. On my second visit after the ticket was verified, he'd seen me checking the shelf again. "You want to remember this?" he asked, holding up his phone. I didn't pose. Didn't smile too wide. Just held the ticket. The corner of my mouth turned up just a little. In the photo, I looked older than I remembered, but also stronger, like someone who had walked through fire and come out clean. Below the frame, I placed a small plaque on a piece of polished pine. I burned the words into it myself with an old wood-burning pen. They toasted their luck. I cashed the truth. I see it every morning. And every morning I stand a little straighter. Before I left the city, I made one last stop. The library. Angela, the librarian, stood at the front desk. I handed her a folded check. "For repairs," I said. "Or books, or heaters in the winter. Whatever you need." She opened it, eyes wide. "Evelyn, this is too much." "It's not enough," I said. "This place gave me shelter when no one else did. You didn't ask questions. You didn't laugh. You let me sit in a corner with dignity. She hugged me warm and real, the kind of hug that asks nothing in return. Now, whenever I pass a library, no matter where I am, I think of that moment, of how small acts can hold up an entire world. I never returned to my old neighborhood, never drove past the house, never checked if they stayed close or moved far. It didn't matter. I stopped looking for them in crowds. I stopped waiting for a knock, and I stopped mourning the silence, because peace wasn't something I found. It was something I made, one step, one truth, one stitch at a time. The envelope arrived in spring. No return address. Just my name written in slanted, uneven handwriting I hadn't seen in over a year. My son's. I stared at it for a long while before opening it. Not with anger. Not even with fear. Just a stillness, the kind that settles in after you've already accepted what someone's capable of. Inside was a letter. No greeting, just a paragraph written like the words had taken a long time to come. I've been thinking about everything. About what we did. I know it was wrong. Dana pushed me, but I let it happen. I wanted to win. I forgot what mattered. I miss you, Ma. I wish we could talk. I'm not asking for money. Just maybe a second chance. Maybe we could reconnect. If not for me, maybe for Lily. No date. No signature. Just the weight of too late. I folded the letter once, then twice. I didn't cry. There was a time I would have. A time I would have read that letter under my blanket and begged myself to believe in forgiveness. But I was not that woman anymore. I wasn't waiting for a doorbell. I wasn't holding my breath. I had built something else now. I pulled out a small note card, the kind with a sunflower painted on the front. Inside I wrote one line. The home I built wasn't made of walls. It was made of memory. And that doesn't need repairing. No scolding, no bitterness, no invitation, just truth. I sealed it, addressed it to the last PTA mailer I had, and sent it without knowing if they still lived there. I didn't need to know. That night, I made a pot of tea. The mint in my windowsill garden had started to bloom. I crushed a leaf between my fingers as dropped it into the cup. I sat in my chair by the window. The late light poured across the floor. Outside, the maple tree rustled softly. Birds hopped through the grass. The world kept turning. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I needed to be seen. To be free, I just was. Peace doesn't need applause, and healing doesn't ask for attention. Sometimes the truest freedom is the one no one notices, the kind you feel in your breath, in your bones, in the quiet of your own home. And that finally was enough, because freedom doesn't come from money. I had to lose almost everything to understand that. For all the headlines, the online chatter, the public sympathy, what stayed with me most wasn't the number on the check. It was the stillness after. No more proving. No more defending. No more asking anyone to believe me. Just being. And in that space, something bloomed. Time. Time to wake slowly. To make my tea with fresh herbs. To read letters I'd tucked away for years. To listen to old music I'd forgotten I loved music I used to play before I got too busy living someone else's life. One afternoon, I opened a cardboard box I'd carried with me when I was pushed out of that house. I'd never unpacked it. Inside were scraps from the past. Ryan's first report card. A crayon drawing of our family he'd labeled me Queen Mama. A Valentine's Day card from my late husband. His cursive always looked like it was trying to run away. I held the card to my chest and cried, not because I missed them, but because I remembered me, the woman I was, before I became someone's burden. Someone's shame, someone's silence. She had survived. She had bought a $5 lottery ticket with the last bill in her grocery envelope, not because she expected to win, but because hope was a habit. She had signed the back with a small smile like always. And when everything was taken, she didn't scream. She remembered who she was. I started volunteering at the library. Angela, the kind librarian who once handed me tissues after reading Dana's post, asked if I'd help sort senior book donations. I said yes. Every Wednesday at 10 a.m., I show up with homemade scones and old stories. I sit with women like me, some louder, some quieter, all of us, with something behind our eyes that says, I've been through something. We trade recipes books, secrets we'd never told our children. No one asks about the money. They just pass the sugar and listen when I speak. That is wealth. One afternoon, Lily came on a school field trip. She didn't see me, but I saw her. She was taller now. Her hair longer, eyes just like Ryan's when he was 6 and used to ask if clouds had names. She stood in the poetry aisle, reading softly to herself, her head tilted the way I used to when I embroidered. And for a moment I wanted to call her name, but I didn't. Because sometimes love is waiting quietly until they're ready to find you again. If she ever is, I'll still be here. I planted a rose bush out back. Not red, white. My husband once told me white roses were brave. They bloomed without needing attention. They just were. I tend to them each morning in silence. I don't want to move again. This house fits. I know every creak in the floor, every whisper in the walls. When the sunlight hits the living room just right, it casts a warm, golden stretch across the floor. And I sit, still, whole. Above the mantel hangs the same photo. Me holding the ticket, a quiet smirk on my face, a glint in my eyes that says, "You thought I would break." But I didn't. I bent, until I became stronger than steel. Beneath it, the plaque still reads, "They toasted their luck." I cashed the truth. People think revenge is loud, that it shows up in courtrooms and headlines. But real revenge, it's quiet. It's living well. It's refusing to let the people who broke you decide what you do with the pieces. So I knit, I laugh, I live. In a home made from memory, not apologies. And when the tea is hot and the light is right, I remember who I am and who I'll never let anyone turn me into again. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.